Most of the people listening to this were not in the workforce when we went from no internet to internet. I wasn't in the workforce, but somebody had to train John, hey, we're going to send an email. We're going to go online and search for things. We're not going to go to the phone book, or we're not going to go to the library or an encyclopedia. Like, guys, that was a huge, monumental shift in how we solve problems. We stopped going to the library and looking at books, and they were all curated for us in search, etc. And this is that next evolution of how we solve problems. So as a leader, if you've been in the game for 10, 15, 20 plus years, we are rewiring the way that we think to solve problems. So before it was like my SDRs or my sales reps, they go to Google, they go to LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh no, we're not doing any of that. Instead, I've got these assistants, they do that for me. And it's a better quality, and it's deeper, richer insights, and it can identify like where I'm missing in the deal. So, and it's just getting us to V1 faster, right? I tell everyone, if you're copying and pasting AI, that you are guaranteed to put yourself out of a job.
Welcome back to another episode of the Sell Like a Leader podcast, the podcast for revenue leaders who are on a mission to cultivate a high-performing sales team within their organization. I'm your host, David Kreiger, president of Sales Roads, America's most trusted sales outsourcing and appointment setting company. And today we have a special treat. We've got a great revenue leader, Jake Dunlap, who I've had the privilege of getting to work on some programs, and just has an amazing team who helps their clients really reinvent their sales processes, and especially over the past several years with an eye to AI. And so Jake is a founder and CEO of Skaled Consulting. They are a globally recognized sales consulting firm that has outperformed industry giants in sales consulting. And again, I can attest to that firsthand. And recently he published a book that, if you haven't checked out, you've got to check out, The Innovative Seller, which is a USA Today best-selling book. Welcome, Jake. Great to have you on the show.
Love that intro, man. Thank you. I'm really excited about the conversation and love talking about the future of go-to-market and where we're headed. So it should be a fun one.
Yeah, I'm excited. And so to that point, the sales landscape has rapidly changed over the past few years with the advent of AI. And I think, Jake, you've been on the forefront of this for selling teams. And I think one of the interesting things, and where I'd like to start, that you've identified is, even though sales has changed considerably, sales teams are still relying on old methodologies, from the challenger sale to MEDDIC to BANT. But in your book, you introduced something called the 4 C's. And I'd love for you to walk the listeners through what that is,
Sure.
Why you think some of the old methodologies aren't working, so we can get your perspective.
Yeah, and I think, I've been a vocal. I'm not even like a anti a lot of these methodologies. I just think that the application has to evolve. That's really what it comes down to, David, is that the way that we applied things, back in 1996 were different than, 2025, right? As you can imagine. So really, as I was writing the book, what I really started to think about, and I'll tell you, it's interesting. I actually, Wiley kind of contracted me to write a different book. It was going to be called The Everyday Guide to Exceptional Sales. And so I really wanted to write this book that would be kind of this go-to resource. So it's like anything that comes up, this is what it would be. And candidly, is like, I spent way too much time writing that book. And then as I got into it, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I don't want to write that. I don't want to write like a sales guide, another sales guide book. I was like, and I was able to use parts of it in the book too. So it ended up being a win-win. But what I really started to think about is like, look, where is B2B sales headed? What is evolving? What's changing? And therefore, if you want to be competitive as a seller or a leader, what are the things that you need to be able to do? And it's funny, I've never been a big acronym guy, but as I worked kind of through the process, we came up with the concept of 4 C's, where I was like, what are the attributes that I think it takes to be successful? And just from what we're seeing, we work with hundreds of clients every single year, for our clients to be successful. And so that's where I came up with the 4 C's. The first, it starts with, commitment to technology and AI proficiency. And I truly believe, like, this to me is one of the biggest issues I see, is that revenue leaders have outsourced their knowledge of what is possible to a RevOps team that's already overwhelmed. And so these leaders aren't able to even, think about, Outreach, SalesLoft, these types of tools came out in 2015, 10 years old. That's it. So if you were a sales leader before that, you learned a whole new play, et cetera. Now there's, 2,000, 3,000 plus sales technologies. One tool that you knew could do this does 75 things. And so I just don't see how you can be a successful sales leader in 2025 and beyond if you do not understand the art of possible with both sales technology and generative AI, which is obviously why I took the firm, heavy there. We're doing 4 to 5 new deployments a month of helping companies to deploy in a structured manner Gen AI deployments, because I think that's where everyone's really struggling is like, we've got our reps, they're using it, what do we do? And we kind of have this jump start where we're like, we're going to pick one department, we scope 3 assistants and 1 automation, we scope the use cases for these other departments, and we really think about AI proficiency as, really treating this like a product roadmap where every organization, each department, AI should be a department by department, a role by role deployment, and really helping companies to get there. And so, that first C in particular, to me, it's funny because, the book came out in about a year ago, and I wrote that part, Gen AI was kind of coming to the forefront. It would have been, probably we went to press, that November, December before, but it was just so painfully obvious to me then, just like how disruptive Gen AI, was going to be. And I think most sales and revenue leaders in general are still behind even comprehending, David, the art of possible with these tools. And so they need to start small to go big is kind of the strategy we've been talking about to become committed to proficiency in revenue tech and AI.
And so that sales leaders can embody that first C, I mean, are there certain things that you really recommend? I mean, for me at Sales Roads, the thing that I've been trying to preach is, listen, a lot of times we don't even know exactly what the tools are going to do, what's going to work, what's not going to work. So we just need to lean in. We've got to use it. I mean, we've had clients that are basically like, no, we aren't using AI. It's not secure. And I just feel like
it's insane.
I get like that there's privacy concerns, but if you don't lean in, you don't just start understanding and flexing that muscle to understand how it works, where it doesn't work, you're going to be left behind. And so is there anything in particular that you try to embody or imbue into these sales leaders so that they can embody that first C?
Yeah, I talk about another principle, and this is a life principle that I don't think it's a revolutionary concept. I call it 80-15-5, and I feel like, I saw some of the questions you had sent over ahead of time, and one of the questions was, what should leaders be doing? 80-15-5 is this concept of, 80% of your time should be spent on things that are going to impact your business in the next, call it 3 months or so if you're a sales leader. Maybe it could be, depending on how big your company is, it could be a little bit more, a little bit less. 15% of your time should be things that are going to impact your business, call it 6-12 months from now. And about 5% of your time should be dedicated to things that are going to have a big impact on, your professional career and your business, maybe 9-12-24 months from now. And so the number one piece of advice that I give is you have to block an hour or 2 a week. And look, and it's interesting. I know what the job is, everyone. Like I know the demands. I know what that means. But I also can tell you we are like, as I think about when I first got into this, it's been 2 years now, where I had this, kind of conversation with a buddy of mine, Kevin Dorsey. We're having beers and pizza. And it's like, dude, if it could do that, it could do this and it could do that. And I was like, oh my God, he's right. And I literally emailed my team and said, guys, I need to fire myself as CEO for a week and I need to go just mess with this. And then I was like, this is it. And I think one of the most important kind of mindset shifts to maybe help you to understand, yes, spending 2 to 3 hours a week is worth it, is this is a foundational shift in how we solve problems as humans. This isn't a new technology. This is the same way. Look, most of the people listening to this were not in the workforce when we went from no internet to internet. I wasn't in the workforce, but somebody had to train John, hey, we're going to send an email. We're going to go online and search for things. We're not going to go to the phone book, or we're not going to go to the library or an encyclopedia. Guys, that was a huge, monumental shift in how we solved problems. We stopped going to the library and looking at books, and they were all curated for us in search, etc. And this is that next evolution of how we solve problems. So as a leader, if you've been in the game for 10, 15, 20 plus years, we are rewiring the way that we think to solve problems. So before, it's like my SDRs or my sales reps, they go to Google, they go to LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh no, we're not doing any of that. Instead, I've got these assistants, they do that for me. And it's a better quality, and it's deeper, richer insights, and it can identify like where I'm missing in the deal. So, and it's just getting us to V1 faster, right? I tell everyone, if you're copying and pasting AI, that you are guaranteed to put yourself out of a job. All AI is doing, the same way that Google got us to answers faster, Gen AI is just getting us there even faster. And then the human brain turns on for the last 20%. But now I can get to, if I have 50 minutes to work on something, I get to V1 in 10. And by the time the 50 minutes is up, I get to V3 that I maybe never had bandwidth for. So I think kind of bringing this full circle, that is why leaders have to embrace this. That you have to rewire your brain to solve problems foundationally different than what made you successful even 10 years ago. And I think that's a very tough, David, that's a very tough pill to swallow, once you get to a certain point of your career. But I don't think you can unsee that at this point.
Yeah, and I think you do have to live it because it is so new. It's so different. For you to create some of these strategies, you have to see how it's working. Again, see how it's not working. See also, I agree with you. I think that people can now spend more time on the thinking part of things. However, what I struggle with myself and for the team is making sure that they don't go into monkey mode and they don't go, because you can do things fast, and copy and paste. And so unless you're living it as a leader, you sometimes don't see some of those temptations and think through, how do I make sure that we aren't just going into monkey mode and we're actually using this to create better work. And I think that kind of transitions us into the second C, which I'd love to get your perspective on, is the current go-to-market strategy and what that means in this context and how you advise your clients around that.
Yeah. So the second C is, again, having a current go-to-market strategy. And, I think we as humans, we tend to lock into pattern recognition. If something works, we kind of struggle to then unanchor for things that work. We're like, think about it when you play video games, right? You tend to lock into, if you play 2K or Fortnite, you've got your different plays that you run, and you kind of run, the best of the best players are very, agile. But I think that's what you see happening with outbound, is we're locked into plays that worked, 7 years ago, 6 years ago. And just a little history lesson for everyone. Here's kind of my history lesson. There's a book that everyone follows around go-to-market called Predictable Revenue. Okay, Predictable Revenue. I think this is important. If you all haven't read it, your boss has read it, I promise you. Okay, or your VC or your PE has read it. Predictable Revenue was built around how outbound worked in the early 2000s. Not kidding. And guess what, David? It was pretty simple. The internet was brand new. LinkedIn as a site for networking did not exist. Okay, it did not literally exist. It was a job site until like 2011, right? Or so. Or sorry, it was only jobs, right? And so imagine, what were those guys doing, David? What did they do 24/7? They picked up the phone. And so we built this kind of revenue model that said, activities equals meetings equals pipeline. And that was true when every activity was equal, because they were all high quality activities. It was a high quality phone call. I wasn't using some mass email or whatever. I wrote a message to get a meeting with you, David. I made a call to get a meeting. So all activities were homogenous. You fast forward to today, that's not, I'm doing a LinkedIn, a bulk email versus a customized email. Those are not the same data set. And so we're still continuing to run our teams based off of a book that was written about a strategy that we're not actually even running. If every activity was a customized one-to-one activity, well, then activities equal meetings equal, deals, right? Or opportunities. And so I think for a lot of companies, that's why, I talk about this. We have to start to anchor our go-to-market around the first outcome, which we call a meaningful conversation. And that just simply means like Jake connected with someone that said, I'm going to put you in touch with someone, or maybe the assistant said, hey, I'll help to book a meeting with Janice or whatever it is. And so we have to stop moving. We have to realize the goal isn't account coverage. The goal is generate a meeting with that one person. And somehow, and I think the other kind of history lesson part of this is look, even all the way up to 2015, there was really no way for salespeople to do bulk emails, right? It didn't exist. So again, every email and every call from when that book was written to call it 2015, 2016, every activity was high quality. I had to send a one-to-one to you. I wasn't. And then what happened is there was a run between about 2016 and 2018-ish, 19, where email-only sequences kind of worked. And then what happened is we started to raise a whole group of people who forgot how to call. Then 2020 hit. Then you've got these new hires all starting remote, and they never got to sit there in the pit, of like, oh man, oh, that was good, Jake. I like that saying, etc. And so now you fast forward to today. And today we are trying to run a 2016-17 play when email only kind of worked with people that don't know how to make phone calls because we didn't train them that way. And the leaders, candidly, they might have grown up in the 2020, 2021. They didn't learn how to call. And, there's a lot of data that shows kind of the omni-channel impact. And so my point is, I actually think it's easier than ever for outbound. Yeah, I think it's easier than ever. One of our sister company we spun out last year, Rev Optics, we had a client literally came in January this year, between Q4 and Q1, team of 20 SDRs had 100 more opportunities in one quarter. And it was like, guess what we're going to do, guys? We're not just going to customize the first email, which, by the way, the first email is literally, I have seen it in one sequence out of probably tens, if not hundreds of thousands of sequences, where the first touch point is the highest converting touch point. But yeah, that's the touch point everyone does. Now we're kind of moving past that. We do like a quasi relevancy base. And it's like, all you have to do is pattern disrupt, send a video, send a LinkedIn voice note. I don't really care what you do. Send a handwritten note, coupled with just keep adding value. It's literally that easy. Like if your current go-to-market strategy is focused on generating outcomes and not generating account coverage, you're going to be wildly more successful than somebody who's account coverage only, focused. So that's a little bit of a rant there on that one, but it's just, I again, sometimes I swear to you, I feel like I'm living in bizarro world. Like we'll be talking to a client. I'm like, okay, Jake, but what happens when activity goes down? I go, we're talking about outcomes, but I get it. Like there's pressure from your board, and your board is running the playbook I told you. So I get it. I've been in that seat, and I've worked with, enough, thousands of, CROs over my career now. Like I get it's easier said than done a little bit, but at the end of the day, if you're driving outcomes, that's what people care about,
Yeah, I mean, activity is such a short-term metric, and it's in a virtual world and all those things. It's an easier metric, at least on a day-to-day, to at least see that people are working. But at the end of the day, the thing that is going to keep you in the CRO seat is the outcomes, and so it is, definitely short-sighted. And when you're too short-sighted, then you don't have a long-term
yeah.
future.
Look, people, and this is where leadership comes in, David. Look, people have been making fake dials since forever. Right? Like I remember, this is 2007, maybe. I was running a team, and this dude, he actually ended up becoming a pretty successful sales guy. I stay in touch with him. All of a sudden, I went up to one of my new hires, and they had this list of phone numbers. I'm like, what is this? They're like, they're like, and one of our reps had come up, because we had the most ridiculous minimums. It was 100 dials and 2.5 hours of talk time a day. It was a lot. Like in red, it was too much. And he had a list of fake phone numbers, right? There's another kid I remember, I caught him, the IT flagged to me, hey, this number's been called 30 times in the last 2 months. And it was a fax machine. So it's like, I call the number, it's like, and I'm like, dude, come on, Chris, man. So look, this idea of fake activities has been happening since before the auto stuff, right? But again, I think there's a happy medium. Because I'm all for if people can't manage to an outcome, then you need to kind of look at some of the leading indicators and coach there, right? But again, I want them doing high quality activities. I don't want them to just do punch the button, activities. And I've said this before too. If you are an SDR or a sales rep, and I want you to listen to this, if you're a leader too, and I want you to tell me how this is not logical. If you're an SDR or a sales rep and your manager or your company is telling you to kind of hit send on these templates and just do this, you're putting yourself out of a job.
Right.
You're putting yourself out of a job because you're just saying, guess what? AI can just do that. We're already doing tests. HubSpot just releases Breeze AI agent. And it's like, just hit a template that's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah. We haven't seen any of these outbound ones that are really doing it at scale. But, I think it's we just have to really encourage our people to turn their brain on that 10 to 20%, know their personas, know the value we provide those personas, so they can, be that trusted advisor that somebody wants to meet with, versus, just getting out as much of activity as possible.
Yeah, and I think there's two aspects to that. Which one, maybe AI will get to a point where it can replace it, but personally, I don't think it's there. Is that creative spark and doing the real good pattern interrupt or whatnot, and really making something creative and different than something that AI humans still I think can outperform in that way. Eventually, I think AI, and maybe with some of the right prompts, it can be there now. But then the second part is the trusted advisor, right? I mean, that's if we don't position ourselves as salespeople as that trusted advisor, creating that type of relationship, that's something that is harder for AI to replicate. Now, there are certain personalities that are creating relationships with AIs right now, but it's different, and it always is going to, at least I personally think, will be fundamentally different. And that's where salespeople can play and build their network as an AI who can't build a network, can't build trust over 10 years, over 15 years, over a year of working with somebody. And so with that, with your third C, the customized sales journey, you touched on it a little bit, but maybe you could break it down a little bit for sales leaders. If they're looking at their current go-to-market strategy, they say, oh, you know what, Jake is right, I'm still using the predictable revenue playbook. How do you think through with them, or how do they think about customizing that sales journey with the tools that are available now?
Yeah, so customized sales journey, this is a really important part of the book, and probably one of the, I think one of the most important for people to read and really internalize what this actually means for B2B sales in particular. I'll make the analogy first of B2C sales. Okay, if you think about how we buy things as consumers today, every X number of months, it gets more tailored to us, perfect recommendations, click to buy for this person, more information survey for this person. We are being trained as buyers that, like, if something's not hyper relevant, I've got no time for it, right? And the analogy I always use is I go, how many times in the last 2 weeks have you looked up an item in Amazon? It wasn't available to get shipped to you later today or tomorrow, so you picked a different product that gets there today or tomorrow versus something that would literally get there like 3 days later. Like, just think about that behavior. That is a like less than 5 year, 6 year, maybe 6 year old behavior that just continues to perpetuate in our brains, a speed to information, the ability to consume content. We all consume tons and tons of video content. B2B companies are atrocious at providing consumable content to people, even though more and more people, want to learn about things asynchronously. And so, customized sales journey, really, there's a couple of concepts in there. The first I'll talk about is this concept called VEX, which we talk about in the book, VECS, VEX, which says that, look, today customers are coming to you. There's a vetted group of buyers. I think that's probably anywhere between 10 to 20% of buyers now that say, hey, David, look, I already use your competitor, bro. I used you guys 3 years ago. I've already done ChatGPT research. Like, can we go? Mm-hmm. Like, why are we having this conversation, man? Like, do I really have to sit here? Like, the inbound SDR is one of the worst roles that exists, candidly, in current go-to-market. That's like, hey, Jake, I want to understand some information. It's like, dude, I already know more than you. Why are we waiting another week? Like, I think companies are artificially slowing down their sales cycle left and right because they're not appreciating the vetted, and then the next is educated, which is someone who might not have all those attributes, but maybe they either use a competitor, they're a warm referral from a current client. Each company, we kind of encourage, if they check, 3 or 5 of these boxes and we treat them as vetted, and that means the first call, we're showing up with a solutions engineer, we do this, and I'll kind of get to more of those details. Educated, we show up basically where we would at step 2. Cold, is the C, so VEC, cold, and self-service. Right? McKinsey did a study. I talked about it in the book. McKinsey said, look, by about now and next year, about 20 to 30% of people will be ready to self-service at anything under 50,000. And I think for most people, they're like, but I need to talk to somebody. I'm like, no, I don't. Think if it's a known space, like, I'm not educating you on why this space is important. I've worked with somebody in your, your competitive set. Guys, I'm already there. I'm at step 4. I don't need you to convince me or sell me on the education around why the space is important. I'm already there. And so I think what we do a really bad job of is understanding that you cannot treat every buyer like a conveyor belt. And I think what happens today is everybody starts at the beginning, whether you're vetted, whether you're educated, whether you're cold, or even if you're like, God, I'd love to self-service. That would be amazing. And so, one of the easiest things you can do to get real tactical here, we call it the magic email. And I'm telling you, within a week, you will be blown away, is at least 48 hours before your first call, you have your reps send out, and you can automate this, obviously. Reps send out an email that says, hey, David, I'm really looking forward to our conversation coming up on Friday morning. When I talk to VPs of blank, they're either one, like already familiar with the space, might have used us or a competitor in the past, and I want to make sure I can show up prepared with the right people from our team, or two, they're kind of still exploratory, still trying to kind of understand details, and we'll need to go a little bit deeper into kind of the why. Let me know where you fit on this continuum, and I'll make sure that we're prepared for that conversation on Friday. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
You do that, I'm telling you, your reps within a week, I promise you, a rep is going to flag to the manager, and he's going to go, or she's going to go, oh my gosh, Jake said that he was this, this, and this. I think you need to get on the first call. And so we have to be able to adjust to where, it used to be, because again, let's rewind behavior. In 2010, just 15 years ago, my ability to find out anything about a B2B company was like zero. It's like there weren't all these groups. G2 didn't, I don't know if people still use G2 that much, but like none of this existed, right? So fast forward, it's like, HubSpot started talking about this in like 2010, 11, 12, that buyers are more educated. It was kind of BS then. But if you kind of continue as we get access to more and more and more, and now we have ChatGPT where I'm telling you what people are doing now is they're saying, hey, I'm looking for somebody in the sales engagement space. I've already used them. I want these 3 options. Give me a wild card option of a company that's raised at least 50 million, and boom, I'm coming in hot. And so we still have not adjusted our journey to appreciate that people are coming in more educated, and that is what I think, David, the scariest part is I think that what could end up being like the death knell for B2B sales as a discipline. That outside of the ultra enterprise or ultra relationship-based sale, I think if we can't adapt to this, buyers are not going to want to talk to anybody in B2B sales. They're going to say, look, let me self-guide. And if you think about modern sales today, I really don't want to talk to the salesperson. I just want to talk to the customer success person I'm going to work with. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to get handed off, and all I care about is, am I using the product? And so if, what value is the salesperson going to add if they're spending time trying to qualify me and I already know more than they do?
Yeah.
And so that is the scariest trend for me over the next 2 to 5 years, that if companies do not adapt to have a more customized journey, more and more buyers are going to go work with your competition and opt out of your sales process, because they're like, dude, wait, the whole mindset. And this is what I learned too. Got to hop on a call. Oh, hey, Jacob. Oh yeah, great question. Can you hop on a call? I'm like, just send me a video of like the 2-minute demo I can send to my team, for the love of God, right? Like, and to me, it's both. Like, it's not that there isn't the right time to hop on a call. It's like there's friction in the process or something, but very few companies do a very good job of asynchronous education. I think at last stat was 24% of your time is actually spent with the customer. And so this customized journey is, where are they at in their process? And am I giving them asynchronous ways to, absorb content, to learn about us? Do I have a demo that's tailored to a CFO versus a VP of operations versus a VP of marketing that I can send really quickly as a leave behind 3 separate emails? And the answer for about 98% of companies is no. And I think that's what scares me most about the customized journey, is we just refuse to believe that people are educated and that people are actually smart enough to learn asynchronously without your sales rep hopping on a phone. And those, I think, are the biggest trends on why this matters more than ever.
Yeah, and I think the idea that you have is a good workaround, because I think a lot of times, especially on the inbound side, it's that they need the discovery because they don't have the information. So either just ask the question like you did, which is a great simple workaround, or even like inbound forms or however you're collecting your leads.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
And it can be more, it's stuck before generative AI. Like, there's no reason why inbound forms can't be generative to some extent. They don't have to be just click a button. Here's my, as part of the form, it can ask a few questions, right? And generate and get some of that information so you can start customizing the journey right out of the gate. From an inbound perspective. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we've all been on with a salesperson who's wasting our hard time, and there's no patience for that right now. So,
and that's, the craziest part, David, about that last part. Go ask your average sales leader the last time they bought anything. Go ask them. And I guarantee you, at least 75%, I'll go ahead and say 1 out of 4 is fine, will say, oh my God, it was brutal. And then I go, and I've posted about this on LinkedIn. I'm like, when is the last time you audited your process? It's the same. You're doing the same thing. Like, What do you mean it's brutal? You're literally doing the exact same process. So I just feel like I feel like this edit, anything in the book is probably one of the more easy concepts to grasp, because we know how we like to buy as consumers. And if we can take that mindset of meeting people where they are, letting people learn asynchronously at the right times, and human interventions at the right time as well too, we're going to win. And you're going to build a more, future-proof team. And one thing I will say, and then we can move on, is look, and this is where I think MEDDIC in some of these methodologies have an opportunity, but are also dangerous. Because one of the biggest behavior shifts that I see right now is we're starting to treat MEDDIC like a sales methodology versus a deal review framework, right? It was never meant to be, hey, Jake, to run a good discovery call, did you get these 3 data points? Because guess what? A real bad rep can go get those data points, right? And again, a little history lesson, guys. MEDDIC, which was the precursor to MEDDIC, was invented in 1996. Do you know what buying was like, guys, in 1996? Like, there's a guy like in a mahogany office, and he would just like buy stuff. Like, the buying committee was like 2 people, the owner or the CEO, whoever, but they just buy stuff. Like, the buying committees were probably, I don't even know how to guess, 1/5 the size that they are today. The competition and amount of companies doing something similar to you was probably either non-existent or 1/30th of what it is today. We had more free time. There wasn't social media. There was think about that. MEDDIC was developed around a buyer process from 1996. Now, do I think you can adapt it to today? Absolutely. But you can't make it your methodology. And that's with a lot of our clients. I'm like, look, we actually don't have to necessarily get rid of MEDDIC. We have a framework called intent that we think is more accurate, that we call the N is for next steps. We found that today, and I put this in the book as like a last minute addition, because I was like, why are deals actually struggling today with all these people involved? And where did I feel like some of them fell down? So next steps, right now, momentum is the killer. If you are not driving next steps, the deals won't get done. This mythical champion's not going to do it. They got too many things. The T is for teams. This concept of one decision maker or one economic buyer is insane, right? And the decision maker today could be somebody 2 levels below the SVP who's a squeaky wheel in the room. So you got to understand the teams. Education level, I talked about education as a part of it. Numerical priority over pains. If you are not a top 3 numerical priority for that department over the next 2 quarters, your deal's not getting done. So moving away from this concept of pain, I can tell you, I get 8 leaders together. They all listen to the call. 4 say, yep, there's a pain. 2 say, and 2 are like, nah. Numerical priority is non-refutable. Is this a top 3 numerical priority for your department as a part of it? And then the last T is time to impact. And that means, when does the customer need to see results by, right? And I think MEDDIC has a version of that called compelling event, but it's like, next steps, if I know the next steps and I'm driving to that, I know the teams that are involved. There's usually a buyer team and an end user team, sometimes a vetting team, right? I understand the education level. I'm meeting people where they're at and educating them asynchronously, right? I understand I'm solving a top 3 numerical priority, right? And I understand when the customer needs to actually see the benefit of what we do. But I'm in the deal. I know I'm there. And so that's kind of how we evolved MEDDIC. Again, we have clients where we've evolved it for them, but you still have to think about these weaving in the concepts of intent there too, of not just saying what's the economic buyer, saying what's the economic buyer team of people. So we've had some really good success, adapting it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that makes a lot of sense. This day and age, and amazing that it's 1996. That's like 30 years ago. It's
right?
Crazy.
I know. And like I said, I don't want to poo-poo it too much, because like I said, it can still be applicable. You cannot make it a deal framework. Because I'll tell you, one of the most dangerous things that we're seeing with our clients is, there's a client of ours, I won't talk about who they are, but they had a Gong initiative. and they didn't really have a tight methodology. But what they want to do, they wanted to make MEDDIC into Gong, and which is, by the way, I'm totally fine with that as a deal evaluation framework. But guess what ends up happening? In lieu of a tight playbook, your sales leaders start to coach to MEDDIC as your methodology. Jake, did you run a good call? Jake, your first call. Oh, look what Gong said that you did. 1, 2, 3. I did great. I listened to the call. The call's terrible. And so we've got to move off this idea of like, look, it's a deal evaluation framework. It doesn't equal a good call for a discovery, demo, proposal, contract. Like, those are two different things.
So as we come to then here, I do want to get into a few tech stack types of things, because I think a lot of what sales leaders are struggling with, and have frankly struggled with for a long time, but I think it's on steroids now in the age of AI, is there are so many different tools, and we can get caught up in the promise of them. But I think we've seen, and I think you even posted about it recently, sometimes we can make our teams less effective because we're just throwing so many different things at them. What are your thoughts around both evaluating, what you need or don't need in this current age, and are there any things that stand out as a tool that is more ubiquitous? And I know a lot of times it's got to just be customized to the company and the use case.
Sure. Yeah. There's a couple of things in there. One is you have to make sure that you're prioritizing the biggest bottlenecks in your revenue org, and you're focused on deploying things there. So, if there's a new tool you hear about and it's not solving one of your top 2 or 3 numerical priorities for your revenue team, amazing. Let's put that on the docket for November and we'll pick it back up. So you have to stay focused. You have to realize, look, technology and process improvements are meant to drive more revenue. That's it. And if it doesn't align to that, and I can't say specifically, hey, look, our number 1 challenge is X, our number 2, and this is exactly how we're going to quantify the impact of this technology or process change, you may want to reconsider, right? And it's not that you don't want to prioritize it. You might, just want to think about doing it there. So you're always focused on finding solutions that are to the revenue challenge that we're having right now. That is the number 1 or number 2 bottleneck. Right. And so that's kind of like my first piece. And then I'll get I'm going to come back to that actually. The number 2 piece is 1 piece of technology implemented at 100% is better than 3 pieces implemented at 30. I equate that. This is kind of my book analogy. Actually, I don't know if I've ever made this, David. This is an exclusive Jake analogy, but I've made it to my others before. There are these people out there. How many books did you read this year? It's like, I got a bookcase. You got a bookcase. I read 35 books this year. Amazing. Tell me about this book. And what did you actually tactically implement? It's like crickets, right? So I think most of us are these consumers of books, and we don't do anything about it. And I've put this challenge out there. Most people are better reading 1 book a year, 1 book, and fully executing everything that book says to do. And I think sales technology or revenue technology is exactly like that. That where I see the biggest lift is to getting there, all the work that has to happen. And I know it's a lot of work. Trust me, we implement at least thousands of sales technologies every year we're touching or implementing. And it's a lot of work to get there. The deployment of your technology, of a new technology, is step 0. And when you start to have a step 0 mindset, that deployment and initial training is step 0, and you realize the only goal of deploying a technology is to create power users within my organization, it foundationally shifts how you think about deploying software. So I don't care what software you pick. You're probably better off picking less and deploying fully, which means it's baked into the company, it's baked into what they're doing, and it's solving the number 1 bottleneck for your company over the next, 2 to 4 quarters. That is if you pick that way, I think you're going to be you're going to be good. You'll be better than most people.
Yeah, I think that framework and that methodology is fantastic. And we look at it. At Salesforce, we've been very limited in what we deploy, and we tried not to tech stack up because I think also what we forget, and I think you touched on it, is there's going to be a period of time where actually productivity will go down. People are confused. They're not understanding how to use the technology, all those types of things. And we think, and we're sold on all these magic, solves for your problems, but you have to go into it with your eyes open and with a plan, like you said. And I like the idea that you look at it as, ground zero, or the first step, that it is going to be a process, not just to implement it, but also to make sure that people are using it in the right way and the organization understands how to use it in the right way to be able to get the results that you're looking for.
That's right. And I think what we tell a lot of leaders is like that this is where sales leaders shoot themselves in the foot. Is they, you say, well, when do you need to see this by? And what does every leader say, David? Hey, when does this need to go live by? What's
Yesterday.
The answer? Yesterday, exactly. Tomorrow, right? So this is answer number 2 if we're playing Family Feud. That mindset is why you're struggling with technology adoption. You have to realize I need to, again, going back to time to impact. When do you need to see impact by? And don't give me this yesterday BS. Actually, what's the date? And now how do we reverse engineer the deployment plan to get my team to power usage and adoption by that date? And I feel like the one tool I will say, and then I know we got to wrap up, is you need to start deploying generative AI right now. Right now. You need to pick, and again, you don't need to overthink it. You don't need to say, what's my Gen AI strategy for my whole stop? Again, what's my process? You're going to pick one group. We're going to find one way to deploy ChatGPT Teams, Gemini, Copilot. The beautiful part, and I think people need to hear this, the switching cost to go from a ChatGPT Teams instance to a Gemini instance is like nothing. Like the ability we have to build the exact same assistants at one versus the other, 10, 20 hours of optimization. So you're not locking in. And guess what? All their UIs look the exact same. There's like a list of gyms over here or GPTs, and then there's a chat. So like the UI different isn't there. So just picking one solution. Again, what's the bottleneck I'm having in my team? What are the 3 ways we can deploy Gen AI? You need to start to do that now. You have to start to get a more standardized way that your team is using this. And a prompt library, that was great 16 months ago. We built out our first prompt library almost 24 months ago, but we're not prompting anymore. We have assistants that prompt the reps. And then it's like, well, actually, let's just build an automation in Salesforce. You hit enrich, it runs through 3 assistants and pipes it in. So don't get overwhelmed with all the things I'm even saying. We're going to pick one department. You're going to pick one department. We're going to decide 2 or 3 standardized use case, and we're going to deploy. And so that is one where I think everyone does need to do something now more than ever.
No, that is awesome. Well, we are going to wrap on that. The one thing I'd like to do, Jake, that we do with all of our guests is do a few rapid fire questions if you're up for it.
And of course, let's do it.
Run through them with the first thing that pops in your head. What is one thing that people don't give enough value or attention to in leadership?
Your job is not to fix people. Your job is to help people get to the best version of themselves that they can be. But your job is not to fix people.
Love it. What is one skill you advise everyone in sales to masters?
Listening.
Favorite business, leadership, or sales book?
Man, I mean, obviously I'm going to say Innovative Seller as a part of this. There was a book I read really early in my career. It was called Discipline Without Punishment. It's probably 20 years old now. And that book helped me to kind of understand the grappling that I think a lot of us have with accountability coupled with kindness almost. And yeah, it's a kind of a textbook, kind of boring book, honestly, but Discipline Without Punishment, I think is one where if you haven't read that book and you're a leader, it's worth, I'm sure, again, I haven't read it in a few years, but it could be worth a read.
I'll check it out. That'll be my one book for 2026.
You can have multiple.
Favorite quote, mantra, or saying that inspires you as a sales leader?
You are the person you are when nobody's looking.
Nice. And finally, what is the most important goal or project you're working on right now?
For me right now, it's launching Journey AI. So I started a company. That's what I needed to do after, I've got 35 people and a full payroll. Journey AI, what we've done is kind of our assistants that we've built out into one platform. So if you're a go-to-market team, you can set up, we already have these kind of 7 out of the box assistants to help you do research, book meetings, build account plans, etc. You can set up projects for each account, and then they all know kind of the account that they're working on together. It runs off of ChatGPT 5.0 and Perplexity. And so it's just kind of out of the box go-to-market assistant. So like I said, we just saw most people, sales leaders, like, please give me a box to check this AI thing. And so Journey AI, we literally just launched with alpha. You can sign up. We'll make sure you have the link. You can sign up for a free trial, check it out. Let me know what you think. And we'll be going live into full production probably in early Q4. So that's what I'm pumped out about.
Well, that's exciting. Well, Jake, this was a fantastic conversation. Really appreciate you bringing your perspective, your views on AI, sales leadership. If people want to connect with you, or learn more about what you're working on, what's the best way?
Yeah, come check out what we're doing at Skaled. It's skaled.com. You can check out our different kind of AI services. Our core business is more kind of you might call it revenue operations optimization, where we feel like AI was just a natural part of how you build that. To go check out Journey, it's meetjourney.ai. And check that out if you're interested. And then LinkedIn, I post, almost every day, probably at least every day on LinkedIn. So if you're somebody who geeks out on tactical advice and, wants to stay up to speed, and then YouTube, we're putting out a lot of videos around AI in particular on YouTube. So we'll make sure you have all those links for the show.
We'll put them in the show notes. All right, Jake, as always, so great to chat with you. For you guys listening out there, thanks so much for listening to the Sell Like a Leader podcast. I'm David Kreiger. Hit me up on LinkedIn with any questions, guests, comments, feedback. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.